My name is Grimmy, and I've come to reap your immortal soul.
Hey, so this video is going to be a little more rambly. I basically just had this build concept that I've been thinking of for the past few days, and I just wanted to put it all together, and I'm definitely going to test this out in-game. I actually just leveled the character to the maps, and I want to see if this build has any legs to stand on. But basically, you already know what's going on. You read the title. This is a Summon Reaper Gladiator. Why Gladiator? More than skill with a Theorycraft is insane. You go to configuration with this build, and you click on Have You Blocked Recently? And you are at 99.99 block. What are you talking about? That's insane. So I had to try this out while it's here, and I only play summoner builds because I'm just that type of guy. So I really wanted to put together a Summon Reaper build. Now, why Reaper specifically? Really only one reason, and it's because it's thematic. There's not really a better reason than that. I think that any minion would work with this, and I actually think the most effective one would probably be Forged Frostbearers. But the only nice thing about Reapers, if you look at the tree, you'll notice that there is not a single skill that affects Reapers. It doesn't exist. Every other minion type has a skill that impacts it in some way that's useful. And Reapers just don't. Well, I guess along with like spiders and wolves, but like those guys aren't even real. So anyways, moving on. Big issue with the Ascendancy is what do you do with the other Ascendancy points? And that is a big problem. Now, I've elected to go here to Gratuitous Violence. For bleeding enemies, you kill explode. Now, obviously, the Reapers aren't me, so I'm not getting those kills. But I'm running Gravebind, which lets me take those kills and then make them blow up. Pretty cool. I then use the other 2 points for Weapon Master. This gives me more AoE, which should theoretically make these explosions bigger. Not entirely sure. This is weirdly something with no research done. If you look it up, I think there's a Reddit article of some guy from like a year ago saying, does increased AoE impact Gratuitous Violence explosions? And there's no responses. Like not a single soul looked at that one. Really odd stuff. But anyways, I want to move on to the gear. I'm a bit of a visual learner, so I feel like PoB and this display kind of helps understand what's going on. So, really important. I'm going crit. Why go crit instead of bleed? Well, I'm running Reapers of Revenants. And Reapers of Revenants do not impact... the Reaper of Revenants skill gem does not have any sort of synergy with bleed on it because they removed it all for some reason. I don't know. GGG hates it. So, because we can only run Reaper of Revenants, and they don't have innate more damage with bleed like the normal Reaper does right here, or the cool Reaper in Eviscerating does right here, there's not really a point in going bleed. You're also running 10 Reapers because we're running Dark Monarch, which makes it so if you're running 10 Reapers and you go full bleed, only the highest bleed is doing anything. So their bleeds aren't doing anything. So like, what's the point? So instead I'm going crit. Crit also allows me to go, obviously Modest Teaching, which allows the Weapon Master to work, because if I ran a normal minion wand, there is nothing on here that is affected by a minion wand. Now, you could also just take these out and then go like one block chance thing, which is useful, I guess, and then attack speed. This is like valid, because I don't even know if this does anything yet, but I think it's cool, so I'm doing it. Anyways, already went over Dark Monarch. Azadi Crest, yeah. Dragonfang Flight, this gives +3 to Reaper gems, which is super cheap because no one plays this minion. Really cool. The body is Doppelganger, guys. This never shows up in PoB. This is just for tankiness. That's it. You're never going insane. We are mad sane. There's a Gloam Ring here because the Reapers just are not very tanky. And there's also a Bone Ring here for, the same reason. Also, you could roll all the damage increasing minion modifiers, which is very nice. Gravebind, for reasons I explained before. Darkness Enthroned, while always being a very good minion belt, specifically helps this build because I can get minions have chance to cause bleeding on attacks. And the jewels here multiply that, get around 60%, and then increase that with vulnerability to 85%, which with so many Reapers running around should be close to 100. So every enemy, if they don't die in one hit, will probably be bleeding, meaning that I can steal that kill and then blow them up. Boots is just casual defense boots. It just gives life and res. The only thing that really matters is that you want brittle ground while moving, because if enemies are standing on that brittle ground, and you're just going to be face tanking everything normally, so you want to walk on top of every enemy. Attacks against them will have increased crit strike chance, which is very nice. And then flasks are just all the elements, because you can get extra max res. There's also an angle where you go forbidden flesh. Not forbidden flesh, but melding of the flesh. But I don't think I'm rich enough for that, so I won't. And then a bottled faith. This is like a third of the build's budget, and it's honestly not even necessary. You can just replace this with like anything. I dropped one because I'm crazy, but I understand that this doesn't really apply to everyone, and you might not even want to make the investment in such an expensive sulfur flask. But I have one, so I will use it. And then I can just move on to gem levels. Sorry, my gem setups. So, purity of elements for tankiness for you and your minions makes you elemental ailment immune, as also the Reapers are elemental ailment immune, which is very nice because I think they die a lot. They don't really have exceptional defenses. Tempest Shield for spell block. Flesh and Stone for allowing you to choose between taking less damage and also your minions dealing more damage. You get a Blood Stance, which is pretty nice. Reaper of Evidence is linked to all of this stuff, basically just going pure physical damage. Technically, Empower and Increased Critical Strikes are like the same amount of damage, but I'm running Empower because it makes them tankier too. I have Automation and Convocation set up with more duration, and Steel Skin, which is not appearing here because I have it deactivated, so it doesn't inflate the max hits. I have Flame Dash, I have Generosity of Precision. This is to give them all increased crit chance and increased accuracy. Cast When Stun, Desecrate, and Spirit Offering is cool, and also I'm not going Stun Immune once again, even though it is easy to get Stun Immune if you just get Ghastly Jewels that give you a chance to avoid stun in here. But I don't think I'm going to do that because I want to try this out, and if it's really bad, I will update you guys and let you know. Then I just have Shield Charge, Faster Attacks, the Assassin's Mark, and the Boots. I also just have an empty Jewel slot because I haven't figured out what to do. Empty Gem slot. Because originally I had a single Reaper that was going to run Maim and Feeding Frenzy, and I'll put that testing up right now. When GGG shadow nerfed Reapers, they didn't tell anyone because they made it so that you can't mix different varieties of Reaper together, as in the different types of the skill gem. They also made it so you can't mix the same type of Reaper together on different skill gems, which is weird because I don't think a single other minion has interactions like that I know of. But yeah, so even with 10 maxed Reapers, I can't run a single other Reaper to give Feeding Frenzy, which is a huge loss in DPS, because Feeding Frenzy buff gives 10% more damage to minions. So that's really tragic, and probably a reason why I should switch over later to Perfect Dark Reapers instead, because they also have 100% bleed chance innately and can stack bleed, so they make sense to stack a lot of. But I want to see the difference, so I'm going to try this out and then switch to those Reapers later, just so I can understand, the pros and cons of both. But anyways, yeah. Also, forgot about this while I was talking about the budget. The other third of the budget, because this whole build, I put this together for around 20 div. It would be 30 div total with the Ball of Faith, but I already had that, so it was really like 20 div. And this was a third of it, which is really nice for Grand Spectrums because usually these things are stupid expensive. But, yeah, they're still quite expensive compared to the other stuff in this build, but they do give 90 crit strike multiplier to minions, and no one runs them, so they're actually like the cheapest. So it actually is pretty effective. Anyways, moving on to the skill tree. Basically, all I want to touch on is that here there's a Blue Nightmare. This gives 13% spell block chance. Useful. Here is an Unnecessary Unnatural Instinct. You don't have to run this. It changes like nothing. It just gives me a little bit of life regen, health, mana, cast speed, and AoE, and skill duration, which is all just like nice quality of life stuff, but really doesn't make or break the build. I just thought it was cool, and I have one in my inventory, but not entirely necessary. You can save 3 points here and go somewhere else with that. Then we are going elegant here. We are going ostentatious. We are a little ostentatious with it. This is because there's so many notables here that can be changed by Elegant Hubris into Slumlords. This is a seed that I specifically found a PoE trade for 1 divine, so I'm using it and I already bought it. But if you are crazy and put a lot of money into this build, you could get so many Slumlords that you can get like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a 6th one here for an insane amount of minion damage, which is really cool. I'm personally using it for just 1 Slumlord and then fixing my endurance charges with this Eternal Resilience. Then, as is the classic with most minion builds, you're basically just going defenses, and all the offenses for the minions just go into cluster jewels. These are just like classic cluster jewels with 25% increased effect, increased attack and cast speed, and then Vicious Bite, because it gives crit strike chance and crit multi for minions. The only other thing of note is, I guess, this Fearsome Force here, which, I mean, is a classic. Also, Minion Offense Mastery, new one that I haven't gotten to test out recently, which gives minions 50% chance to ignore phys damage reduction on enemies, which is pretty cool. The other one is just increased effective offerings for my Spirit Offering. That also gives them crit chance, crit multi. And then the only other mastery that really matters is that there's +1 chance to block spell damage for chance to block attack damage. This is just because blocking spell damage is hard to come by, and it helps out. But if you max it out via other ways somehow, and you could make up for 14% block chance from that, you could get life and mana gain when you block, which is like useful, I guess. Anyways, also because we're ignoring attributes, you can tattoo the entire tree. This allows you to fix any block chance issues to get to 78 with your tree, and then, you know, every other thing could be used either to fix resistances, which is kind of hard to come by, or to do what I did and just tattoo it all for regen. This is what I'm planning to do. 1, because these tattoos, I believe, are pretty cheap. And 2, because I think the big things that are going to kill this build are degens and massive unblockable hits. Because obviously, massive unblockable hits are just going to go straight through, and just like, my max hit is not that insane, because my life is also not that high. But this is also on like just random gear that I put together. I think actually in-game it'll be much higher. But yeah, not very impressive right now. But degens are a big issue. I'm trying to counteract that with life regen. Also the fact that I'm running Consecrated Ground and the Doppelganger guys gives me 700 regen per second. This is respectable. Not insane, but respectable. I'm also running Soul of Arakali, which is giving me reduced damage taken from damage over time, and then also debuffs expire faster. And just, you know, all that generally good stuff. There's also a lot of ways in this build through jewels to get immune to all these sorts of degens. I mean, you can get poison immune just from getting 1 singular jewel here that has chance to avoid poison. You can get bleeding immune by tattoos, or I could go, what is it called? Oh, I could just get a jewel with bleeding cannot be inflicted on you. Same with, I could also get a jewel with corrupted blood can't be inflicted, and then avoid all of those. So then all you have to worry about is like weird lightning, cold, and fire damage over time that isn't ignite. So yeah, there are a lot of issues that can be fixed. There's also this protection mastery, which gives you corrupted blood cannot be inflicted, which is nice. So there's ways to solve it. I'll just have to go through and invest in that. But yeah, that's essentially the build. My build, because I forgot I'm Mercenary. The Mercenary is a Swiftblade. Specifically because Swiftblades, maybe I can actually pull it up. Yes, Swiftblades run Rallying Cry. Everyone's been talking about it. You probably already know about this. And Pride, which is useful. And Insight, which I haven't found, but it grants frenzy charges. But yeah, the Rallying Cry is giving my minions a percentage of this Kingmaker. Also, the Kingmaker is applying 50% to critical strike multiplier and fortification. Very useful stuff. It's, you know, best of everything, and everyone's running it anyways. This helmet just has nearby enemies take increased physical damage. There's also another angle, which I learned while I was researching this, where you could run a helmet with the new infamous modifier that says nearby enemies take 1% increased physical damage per 2 fortification on you. This is honestly pretty interesting and allows you, because it's not an influence, to put the implicit modifiers from Eldritch currency. So I just have these ones on here. I think they're like the most useful ones I could find just from a preliminary look, but there's definitely more room for cool stuff on here. But obviously, for 10 fortification, you're just getting 5% increased physical damage taken, so it's a little bit worse, but there's more room to do interesting stuff with the implicits. Moving on to our stuff, Shaper's Seed just allows for increased regen. Perkwill's Toes would make a lot of sense with this, only because obviously it's not making crit strike chance lucky, it's just making the damage lucky, and physical damage doesn't have huge ranges it's rolling between, so I decided to go tankier instead, also because Reapers tend to die, and I don't want them to. It allocates Acid Thunder because I'm trying to increase the duration and uptime of the Rallying Cry so that my minions always have that buff. Running Koskri's Will, this is just so I can get the additional curse, and also hexes can affect hexproof enemies, which is pretty nice. Fated End is giving the mercenary a ramping vulnerability curse, because these gloves actually just have vulnerability on them. But one thing I actually learned right before making this that I did not edit in: Painseeker, glove that no one ever uses. Painseekers with vulnerability on hit are like the cheapest gloves with vulnerability on hit on them, and gives inflict non-damaging elements as though dealing more damage. So you can get a high roll of this for like 15 chaos for like 200%, which impacts this Call of the Void, because now all hits can chill. All hits will chill as though dealing double or triple damage. And then enemies killed by your hits lessen their damage dealt, which is just so cool. Also, the fact that my mercenary is chilling, allows me to run Tempest Rising and guarantee that bigger enemies will count as moving, so that all of the bleeds inflicted on them will be aggravated, which won't be a ton of extra damage, but it is extra and it's cool. And also, I didn't have anything else to put in this boot slot. And the bow's a classic Counts Binding. I think that about does it for everything relating to the build. I don't know if I missed anything, but if there is anything that needs explaining, or maybe even explaining why I missed it, please let me know. And yeah, I'm hoping to make a build diary of this build, kind of showcasing how I'm improving it as I go, and if I even think it's worth trying or worth anything, or if it just like sucks as dead in the water. So yeah, thanks for watching. You have a good one.